Yeah. That one I skipped because I thought most people would know it, and there were other things I wanted to put in. I don't really want to. This time we watched Season 8, Episode 8, The She Creature.
It wasn't hypnosis, but it sure put me to sleep.
Hey, before we get to that, it's our 4th anniversary!
Yay! We are recording this on the eve of our 4th anniversary.
And we released the previous episode on our 4th anniversary, so the timeline's a little confused right now, but this was originally scheduled to be the 4th anniversary episode, and we're going to pretend like it still is.
Sure. We can go over all our favorite memories of this 4th year.
What do we want to do to celebrate? You wanted to think about your favorite episode that we covered over the last year?
Yeah, although funnily enough, maybe it's because my mind is drawing a blank, but it's like, what occurs to me is that it's like, well, Monster a Go-Go, of course.
I mean, that is a classic. Hold on, I got to look at this list. We ended last year, we had done the Master Ninjas, and we started with Squirm.
Oh, that's right, I missed that one.
Yeah, you did. You didn't miss much, although The Squirm episode led to one of my favorite things happening because of the podcast, which was I did that segment on Weird Paul Petrosky, and he got in touch and sent us a copy of his Worm in My Egg Cream album. And it was completely delightful and absolutely violating all sorts of copyright issues. So I can see why it's very hard to get your hands on it. But it is great. If you can find it, go listen to it. In terms of like what my favorite episode is that we watched, I mean, shortly after that, we did Alien from LA, which is still one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but we also did Angel's Revenge. Oh, this had some good stuff this year.
Yeah, we had a fun year.
And Village of the Giants. Oh, I forgot all about these.
Well, that's what happens when you record a podcast for 4 years, is that it all bleeds together.
Seriously. Is there anything other than Monster Go-Go that you want to shout out?
I did enjoy, this is the year that we did Pod People.
Yes.
That's absolutely one of my favorites. So it's like, I'm glad that we did Pod People. I'm glad that we did Red Zone Cuba, which is my favorite of the Coleman Francis trilogy. Yeah. This, it's been a fun year.
I'm proud that we got through the Coleman Francis trilogy. Mm-hmm. And now I can wait another 20, 30 years before watching it again.
Yes. Well, that's just it. That's for another podcast. That's for the revisit of Mystery Science Theater 3000. This will be like 7-Up.
So that's the exciting news, that we continue to put out episodes. You know who else puts out episodes? The Mads.
Yeah, so they're doing a damn fine job.
They are, although I haven't watched the last one yet.
No, me neither.
Okay. All right. I'm sure it was very good. In fact, I heard it was very good from other people, and I'm looking forward to watching it, but I haven't seen it yet because I've been very busy, and this is why episodes are coming out so late. Stop hounding me. But hi there, Chris from the future editing this. Just wanted to let you know that I did eventually get a chance to watch Phantom from Space. Dreadful movie, lovely riffing. What are you going to do? Except watch it and watch the next one, which I'll tell you about in the past, presently. That's going to be solved by the next one because they'll be doing some more shorts.
Yay! And the shorts have been probably like, as much as I love the Tingler, it's like the shorts have probably been the highlight of the Mads offering so far, the shorts nights.
Yeah, they're great, and they're bite-sized, so you can just watch it for 10 minutes or so and then come back to it and watch it some more, as opposed to a whole movie, which feels like a commitment that you have to sit and watch The Brain from the Planet Arus from beginning to end, lest you misunderstand it.
Yes, or what was it, The Choppers?
Yeah. Don't talk to me about the Choppers. Now, I've got another update from last episode, a little, not quite a correction, because in the episode, I wasn't sure if this was true or not. Remember I was talking about seeing He-Man on ice?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I finally found the internet evidence I need about this.
Oh, great.
It was in fact called the Masters of the Universe Power Tour. I saw it in New York City in 1987. And it was real, and you can watch it all on YouTube if you want to. And it was not on ice.
What?
Critics describe it as basically He-Man on ice, but in fact it was not on ice, though there was some roller skating.
Okay, well then I can understand the confusion.
Yeah, I may have seen something else on ice, but this loomed so large in my imagination. And yeah, you can watch the entire thing on YouTube in terrible VHS footage if you want. Somebody snuck a camcorder into a performance or something, but it's there in all its glory.
I see your power tour and raise you the He-Man Christmas special.
All right, that is also very good.
Yeah.
In other news, we got a very nice letter recently.
Oh, hooray.
We got a letter from Jason over in Utah who says, I found your podcast a couple months back and I've been burning through your catalog. I'll probably finish up tomorrow, which was a little while ago, but we've put out some episodes since. Your podcast inspired me to do something I've thought about a lot but never done. I'm doing a complete series watch, starting with the KTMA pilot and running through the Netflix seasons, even the fabled Godzilla episode, which I was able to get my hands on a few years ago.
Whoa.
Right now I'm in the middle of season 1 and something surprising has happened. I've found a new affection for the entire series, even the so-called bad episodes. I haven't seen every episode of MST before this watch through, but I bet I've seen 75% of them. And like most people, I've looked down on the KTMA and season 1 era for being a little lackluster at best. But sitting down to watch one episode a day has softened me up a little. I found every episode delightful. Sure, my mind has wandered at times in the dry spots, and sure, some episodes have more dry spots than others, but I'm charmed by the simplicity of these early episodes in a way I've never been before. Now, Adam, I know you tried to do a complete watch through at one point.
I did. Season 1 kneecapped me, and I never recovered.
But, I'm really excited that you're finding the love of them. I certainly agree that there's plenty of joy to be had in the KTMA and season 1 episodes.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why we didn't structure this podcast going strictly in chronological order. Actually, there are many reasons, but
yes, but that's one I've always championed the KTMA era. That so it's good to hear that someone is discovering it and giving it a fair chance. And sure enough, it's like I gave up a little too early on season 1 in my attempt at doing a chronological rewatch in university because I found Robot Monster to be delightful when we watched that for the podcast. So maybe the later season ones are really good. I don't know.
Yeah, or some of them are anyways. Mm-hmm. You can get through the bad ones by enjoying the good ones. Jason goes on, so thanks to you guys for inspiring me to get around to something I should have done a long time ago and helping me find a new fondness for a show that's been an important part of my life for over 30 years. P.S. You guys are totally wrong. The sci-fi era has some of the best episodes of the series.
Now, will this be true today?
Spoiler, it shall not. But there are some good sci-fi era episodes, certainly.
There's Puma Man and there's
Overdrawn at the Memory Bank.
Yep,
that's one of my favorite episodes, and there may be others.
Yes, there may be others that we haven't watched yet. I'm unfamiliar with a lot of season 8, so I'm looking forward to getting through it. I'm just sad that this has to be the example of season 8 that we're talking about today.
Well, I guess we should get on with it then. Let's start talking about the she creature.
Must we?
Yes, but we can have a lot of tangents.
This time we watch Season 8, Episode 8, The She Creature. Dr. Carlo Lombardi is a hypnotist who uses his powers to control both Andrea Talbot and a prehistoric monster thing that may have been Andrea in a past life. For the former, Carlo Rambaldi, wait, that's the guy who did the effects for E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Carlo Lombardi keeps Andrea as a prisoner in a beachside circus using the powers of hypnotism because he's madly in love with her. Those feelings are very much one-sided, but Andrea is powerless to escape. That is, until respectable hypnotist Dr. Ted Erickson falls for Andrea. He starts to break her will free of Lombardi's influence, using his own brainwaves or willpower or soul or some damn thing. Anyway, there's the aforementioned monster that rises from the beach every now and then to kill people, and the movie's cop knows Lombardi is responsible somehow, but he just can't prove it. Oh well. Nothing much happens save for the scenes with Talbot and Lombardi bickering, or more scenes of Ted brooding, or the rare glimpses we get of the title monster. There's a subplot involving a newspaper that I refuse to acknowledge as anything other than a waste of time. Look, eventually Lombardi dies, and the monster leaves or dies or something. I don't know. The monster literally vanishes into thin air. Let us never speak of this movie again. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, Crow has been trying to work on his problem areas with his Thigh Master. And Tom's been trying to defrost a ham with his Thaw Master. But Crow has ended up melted, and Tom's ham is still frozen. Oh, these goofballs must have made a switcheroo. And also, no one on the Satellite of Love seems to know what thawing means, but I guess that's part of the joke or something. Anyway, back to the Season 8 plot. The observers are about to dissect Professor Bobo. Pearl has been put inside an invisible force field jail. She promises that she'll stop forcing Mike and Bots to watch bad movies if they provide her with a distraction. So Mike talks to the nanites. Those little nanites cut the tractor beam holding the satellite to the observer planet, and while most of the observers rush off to figure out what just happened, Pearl gets one of the brain guys to come into her invisible cell. She then grabs his brain pan and holds him hostage. Chaos ensues. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Gypsy realizes that the navigation system isn't working. So Mike has the nanites fix it, and they explode the observer planet to create some force to push them away. So now that's 2 planets destroyed by Mike. All that happens before we watch any movie. So at the first intermission, Crow is test marketing his creepy Tickle Me Carlo Lombardi doll on Mike. It's a creepy doll. Second intermission shows that Pearl, Bobo, and Brain Guy manage to escape the exploding planet in Pearl's space minivan. She has them sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat to pass the time, but Bobo can't figure out how to sing around. Then they get a flat tire? Bobo goes out to fix it and plummets onto something below. The final intermission has Mike studying Lance Fuller's book, Do Not Act. Lance Fuller, of course, plays our hero, Dr. Ted Erickson, and Tom runs a few famous scenes with Mike, encouraging him to mumble and fail to emote just like Lance does in the movie. And then finally the movie is over. The movie did the whole the end with a question mark shtick, and Mike and the Bots try to figure out what that was all about. Then they remember that they have their freedom now, so they try to start the engine to drive off, but it won't go on. Turns out Brain Guy is using his mind as a tractor beam, and Pearl cackles about how Mike and all won't be able to escape. Oh well, the end. This was a really interesting episode to watch after Monster A Go-Go.
Well, I will say this. It's worse than Monster A Go-Go.
The movie?
Yes, it is much worse.
They're differently bad. Let me put it that way. They're both absolute awful kidney stones of movies, but they are very differently bad.
I mean, at the very least, Monster A Go-Go has a memorable ending and a delightful, delightful bit of Foley for a phone.
But it's so punishing to actually sit and watch with its dark, dark scenes and its echoey soundscape.
True.
And its thunking, plodding soundtrack. It's really a miserable, grueling experience to watch, despite the levity of the occasional faked phone ring. However, The She Creature is just an awful movie.
It's boring, which is worse than being a punishing time suck, in my opinion.
It's not just boring. Like, most of the movie is watching Dr. Carlo Lombardi being awful to a woman.
That's boring.
And it's boring, but it's also infuriating, or I found it infuriating. I was just like, God, this guy is just the worst, and I don't want to spend any time with him. And there's nothing redeeming about this film to make up for the fact that I have to spend time with him. And, like, she's not given any agency or personality or anything. None of the women particularly are. But then again, most of the men aren't given much personality either. It's just an awful nothing movie.
Yeah, it's a punishing B movie to watch. It's hard to sit through. I like I said, it's like I've gone through some of the worst movies of all time, both through this show and in my own travels. And I found this to be just absolutely maddening. I would never want to put anyone through The She Creature, and I think had the show been at the top of its game, it would have still struggled to come up with something memorable to do with it. But it's not here, and I think we also have a lackluster episode to go with a terrible movie.
I think we have a worse than lackluster episode. I mean, there are some good moments in the episode, and maybe we'll talk about that at some point. But when they go into the theater and the title card comes up, The She Creature, and the joke is the RuPaul story.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, I don't have the energy for this right now. That was such an unwelcoming way to begin the movie's riffing. And like, I can take those kind of jokes. Like, I've spent a lifetime taking them, but I don't need this. I don't want it. And in the face of a movie this reprehensible, I don't want it. I don't want the riffs to be like that. And that was not the only problematic riff, but But even putting that aside, there were only a handful of riffs that did anything for me, and it just there was nothing to work with.
See, I laughed exactly once, and I still remember it. I wrote it down because it was like, "Hey, I laughed." There's a moment where they're looking over the bodies for the first victims of the she creature, and a police officer or a detective or something says, "Here's something," and Crow responds, "Of course, you could say that about anything." That's a good joke.
That was a good joke. There were a few other times I laughed. I don't want to say that it was completely devoid of any laughs for me, but it wasn't worth it.
No.
It wasn't worth putting up with the bad parts. So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is terrible.
Yep.
But it has a lot of people in it who, for the most part, you don't know.
No.
But who've actually, many of them, had kind of interesting careers. Normally, when we have a star-splattered episode, we do a familiar faces segment. I think this time we're going to do an unfamiliar faces segment.
We have no choice but to do so.
And I think we should start with our villain of the episode, Dr. Carlo Lombardi, who's played by Chester Morris.
Okay, so what's so special about him?
Well, he was once nominated for a Best Actor Oscar.
That I refuse to believe.
It is absolutely the case. It was for the film Alibi from 1929. He's best known for playing this character named Boston Blackie, this jewel thief turned detective in a series of 1940s movies. But that's not why he was nominated for an Oscar. It was for this movie Alibi.
Oh, okay.
And I got curious about it, so I decided to watch Alibi.
How was Alibi?
Well, what if I told you that I think his acting is better in The She Creature
Oh, dear.
than the movie that he was nominated for an Oscar for? It's 1929, right? So this is a movie that was, when they started to plan to make it, if I understand this correctly, they were planning on making a silent film, but they made a talkie.
Oh.
And it's 1929, so they don't really know how to make a talkie yet. Or, making a talkie was incredibly intensive, required a lot more equipment, and didn't give you the levels of flexibility that silent movies had come to at that point. So it's incredibly poorly filmed in a lot of ways. And also, the pacing is completely awful. Everybody says their line. You can barely hear what they're saying. And then there are these long pauses before the next line, the reaction line, comes by. It's incredibly awkward. But there are some interesting things about the film. So he's playing a guy named Chick Williams, who at the beginning of the film just gets out of jail and says that he was framed by the cops. And his girlfriend, Joan, believes him. But Joan's dad is a police sergeant, and he's convinced that Chick, that Dr. Carlo Lombardi's character, that Chick was involved in a robbery in which a cop was killed. Okay? But Chick has an alibi. That's the name of the movie. He couldn't have been guilty. He was at the theater with Joan. So the interesting thing in this film is that it's pre-code, right?
Ooh, so it's sexy.
Well, it's sexy, not super sexy, but Joan is super anti-cop.
Oh.
And there's a lot of all cops are bastards kind of rhetoric coming out of her for a lot of the early parts of the movie. And you don't expect that in an early film.
No, admittedly not.
Now, eventually, it becomes clear that Chick is actually guilty. The film doesn't do as good a job playing with the is he or isn't he as it probably should. I mean, that seems like it's the point of the movie, but they don't do as good a job of that, in part because it's not a very good film. But nevertheless, hearing Joan talk about being so anti-police, to her dad, who's pressuring her to get married to this other cop who, of course, is wooing her, et cetera, it was kind of neat. I don't know. There were some neat things to it, but nobody should watch this movie. And he should not have been up for an Oscar for it. He is not very good in this film.
Nor any film, judging by the she creature.
Yeah, I don't know. People aren't that fond of those Boston Blackie films, which is a terrible name.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's common to get the nickname Blackie in the 1930s, but at the same time, it's a touch unpleasant to hear it today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a racialized thing, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Dr. Lombardi. The next person probably worth talking about is Tom Conway.
Tim Conway?
No, not Tim Conway. Tom Conway.
Oh, no. That doesn't sound fun. Who was he?
He plays the rich dad. He plays a very rich old guy.
Right.
Where would you guess that Tom Conway was born based on what you saw here?
Oh, man. Well, I'd have to say that he's probably just like MST3K. He's a Wisconsinite through and through. Woo.
Okay. No. He was born in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Okay.
And I think his family was English, however, because they all have very English names, and he's got an English accent, although you can't tell in at this time because of the sort of mid-Atlantic accent thing.
Yeah.
But he was born into a wealthy family. He's got this wild IMDb bio. He was born into a wealthy family in the Russian Empire, and then the Russian Revolution came. And so he was 13 when this happened, and all of them fled to England, leaving most of their wealth behind. And after he went to college and so forth, grew up, he went to northern Rhodesia when he worked in gold, copper, and asbestos mines. So that's not good. Those were not good places. And then he did pretty poorly there. He went back home. He started doing a few things, and then he started acting. His brother had already been an actor, so this brother talked him into moving to Hollywood. And then he started working at MGM and had a few bit parts, but then basically ended up working in a bunch of little movies, including I Walked with a Zombie.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good movie.
Cat People.
And Cat People is the best movie done by that team.
And a little movie called 12 to the Moon.
What?
Which was done in season 5, episode 24.
Yeah. Wow. MST alumnus.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of them in this movie. He had a few good roles for a while, but eventually his life took a bit of a sad turn. His brother stopped talking to him. In 1965, he was found living in a $2 a day room in Venice, California, in a flop house.
Oh, man.
And that led to a lot of money coming in for a bit, but then it didn't last. And he spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. And then it was reported that his former sister-in-law, Zsa Zsa Gabor, visited one day and gave him $200 and said, tip the nurses a little bit so they'll be good to you. The next day, the hospital called her to say that Conway had left with $200, gone to his girlfriend's place, and died in her bed.
Oh.
I mean, not a happy ending, but what a wild, terrible life.
Yeah. That's I would not have pinned that backstory on the man in this movie.
Yeah, Mr. Mustachio.
Yeah.
Who else? We've got Kathy Downs, who plays the rich guy's daughter, Dorothy.
She's always trying to hook up with Ted.
Yeah. Yep, she is. And somebody else is trying to hook up with her, and she keeps trying to rebuff him. Doesn't have much of a personality, and, not much to say about her, except that she was in The Amazing Colossal Man.
Whoa!
So we'll see her again someday.
Hooray!
There's nothing interesting to say about any of these people in terms of their involvement in the she creature. They're all bad. But, another person that we have seen before on MST3K is our hero, Lance Fuller.
Boo.
Who plays Dr. Ted Erickson, mumblingly.
Yes, I mean, my God, who could he have been given how terrible he is in this movie? He would have stood out like a sore thumb in any movie.
Well, he stood out like a giant forehead in a movie called This Island Earth.
What? But all the acting in This Island Earth's terrific, even Coleman Francis.
He plays Brack.
What? That's a starring role. That's a breakout role from the film.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to tell you. I remember Brack. I remember him being sort of not having a lot to do, as being like a second banana character, but I could be wrong.
Yes, he is.
Okay, that's fine. So his mumbly acting or non-acting probably served him very well as making him look alien and unapproachable and giant-headed. He does have a lot of forehead in this movie, too.
Yeah, he's downright five-head.
And this was actually what led to the only sketch that I really laughed at, because I really did enjoy the do not act, the Lance Fuller method sketch. I don't know. I have a real fondness for not acting, for acting incredibly flatly. And so I did really enjoy Mike going through all of these classic lines and saying them with as little passion or emotion or elocution as possible. That made me laugh a lot. Thank God something did.
There's got to be at least one life raft out there save you from the horrors of the she creature.
Another actor that I want to point out is L. Brendell.
L. Brendell?
Yeah. He played the butler with the Scandinavian accent.
Right.
Now, L. Brendell is an interesting character. He was a vaudeville guy you wouldn't have guessed, whose entire routine was playing a Swedish immigrant like this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Usually named something like Ola Olsen or something. And he did this in dozens and dozens and dozens of films over the course of several decades. This is his next to last film.
Oh.
And I thought, okay, that's fine. That's all interesting. And I was looking over his filmography, and then I noticed that one of his earliest films is a little film called Wings.
So that was the basis for the NBC series of the same name?
It might have been. I tried not to watch that show, but I'd always wanted to watch Wings because Wings has that trivia distinction because it was the very first film to win Best Picture.
Oh.
In the Academy Awards. And it's the only film from the silent era that won Best Picture. And I thought, okay, I've always been curious about this. Maybe I'll watch it. I noticed that he played a character named Hermann Schwimpf in it. I could be mispronouncing that because, of course, it's a silent film. So I was like, well, maybe that's not Swedish. And it's not. He's playing a German stereotype at this point.
But full of comedy, I'm sure.
Well, you know, it's funnier than this movie in terms of that. So you haven't seen Wings, right?
No, I have not seen Wings.
It's incredibly good.
Oh.
I was shocked at how good this film is. It is very sentimental and very melodramatic. And there's a lot of dogfighting sequences in it. It takes place during World War I. It's about these two boys from small town America. One of them, the richest kid in town, the other one, normal, I guess.
Yeah.
And during World War I, they both sign up to be airmen, and they go off. Gary Cooper is in it very briefly. He shows up when they first get to their training camps. He shows up in there, he's going to be bunking with them, and he's like, you all have Lucky Charms that you bring up with you. I don't, because, we all have our day. He's in the movie for 3 minutes because he goes out, takes his first flight, and dies. Just crashes and dies. But people loved that so much that it just launched his career. So there you go. Brendell is in it as the most important not main character, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a pretty decent-sized role. He is the comic relief of the film, of course, and he's playing the same damn character. He is playing a German person who, it's World War I, so he keeps encountering army people who don't want to let him into the army or don't want him to be part of the army because he is German. And then he gets really indignant and just tears off his jacket and rolls up his sleeve and shows everybody that he's got the stars and stripes tattooed on his arm. And then they're all like, oh, okay, you're super American. You can totally be in the army. It's wild. He's fine in it. I don't know. It's not that funny, but he's fine in it. This is also a pre-code film, so you do get to see some full male nudity.
Finally.
From behind. But nevertheless, you do get to see some, young military butt. So that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that brings whole new meaning to the word wings.
Exactly. And this was an incredibly expensive movie to film. It was full of spectacle. People got hurt during the filming of it. There's a fabulous number of extras. There are wild scenes of air fights that are entirely done without special effects. Like, it's just gorgeous. It's over the top gorgeous. And it was a film that was considered lost for many, many decades until they found a copy in 1992, I believe. And they've lovingly restored it. It's out there. It's totally worth watching. It is absolutely sentimental, but it's really great. I don't know. You should go see it if you have a chance.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I need something to wash the taste of the she creature out of my mouth.
Absolutely. You could do a lot worse than Wings. I am so happy that I watched this film. The other person in the cast that I wanted to mention was the amazingly named Flo Burt.
Flo Burt?
Flo Burt. Flo Burt plays the Scandinavian, chef or something in that scene. There's one scene. There's like a party, and she's like catering it, and she does some dialogue with Brendell's character. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that Flo Burt was Brendell's vaudeville partner and eventually wife for many, many decades.
Oh.
She didn't get to be in nearly as many films as he was for reasons that are unclear, but let's just say it's because she's a woman. She seems interesting. There's very little information out there about her. But the one thing that I found is that, at least back in her vaudeville days, when she was putting out a few records and so forth, she called herself 4'9" of ragtime, which is fabulous. So those are the unfamiliar faces that I saw. Now, this film was brought to us by another classic crew that we've talked about before.
Yes, Arkoff and Nicholson.
When did we go into them? Do you remember?
That would have been, I think it was the Undead.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the correct link will be in our show notes.
For the diehard listener.
And I believe that there are some other connections to other MST3K things.
But that is an exhaustive list. This episode is full of connections to previous MST3K episodes, which really shocked me upon researching this episode. It was like, oh wow, there's too much to list here.
Yeah, it would absolutely be a boring list, but suffice it to say that like everyone in the crew seems to have worked on 3 other episodes. And not in an obvious way. It's not like they're all Corman people. I mean, I guess they're all connected with Arkoff and Nicholson and whatever, but like this is a whole bunch of different movies.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild, and again, it gives you a lot of flavor of like different people and different MST3K experiments. It was kind of fun to read up on. It's like, oh, they're in this instead of just another season 8 thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, that's a roundup of some of the people who are in this film who you wouldn't recognize, but some of whom did kind of interesting stuff. There you go. That's my topic, and I'm sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch Wings.
All the people that you find interesting, plus Chester Morris.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shadow 13.
It's time for the Shadow 13. 13 terrifying trivia tidbits about today's episode. The she creature. Go, Chris, go.
According to the IMDb, Peter Lorre was attached to play the rich dad, Timothy Chapel, which is one thing that might have made this movie bearable. The IMDb also says, so, take this with a grain of salt, but they say that Lorre was so appalled by the script that he had his agent fired for trying to get him in The She Creature.
When Lorre left the project, John Carradine was apparently offered the part of Chapel, but turned it down. Yes, you heard that right. The She Creature is a film so bad that John Carradine turned it down.
Speaking of what might have been, casting-wise, apparently Mike Connors was originally supposed to play Dr. Erickson. Connors is better known to Misties as Touch Connors from Roger Corman's Swamp Diamonds, riffed in Season 5.
The She Creature was released in 1956 on a double bill with It Conquered the World. The latter was, of course, riffed in Season 3, and we covered it on this podcast all the way back on It's Just a Show Episode 7. Link in the show notes.
For the Sci-Fi Channel's internet equivalent to the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide, Mike Nelson had little to say about the episode. Unfortunately, many of my memories of past movies are swamped by ill feelings toward its actors. Did funny or interesting things happen during the filming of episode 808, The She Creature? I couldn't tell you. I was busy hating Lance Fuller. Any on-set shenanigans? Don't know. I was calling a contract hit on Dr. Carlo Lombardi.
The episode does represent the last time Mike Nelson was seen as a fellow observer. Nelson writes, I do remember feeling unmitigated joy at finishing my final shot as the observer. No more clown white, an evil invention. It takes roughly 1,300 scrubbings with lava soap to get the crap out of your skin. By the time you're done, your skin isn't so much red as it is gone. You can see the musculature that covers your face. You must go into hiding for weeks until the new flesh begins to grow and fill in. There are many good reasons not to become a clown, i.e., they're evil, wholly unfunny creatures in league with the man-goat, and Clown White is at the top of the list.
Wait a second. If the observers have been wiped out of existence by Mike, save Observer, of course, then how come there are so many observers at Kinga's wedding in Season 11? You don't suppose Pearl and Brain Guy... No. Let's not think about that. Remember the MST3K mantra and the title of this podcast, everybody.
In segment 3, Pearl calls Brain Guy powder.
And don't forget, you got to pony up some gas money, too. Got that powder.
Hoo boy, that's a story. Content warning. You may want to hit skip 30 a few times on this one. The 1995 film Powder is the story of a misunderstood albino teen who'd been kept hidden from the world. Once he enters normal society, he earns a lot of hatred for being different, but he has powers that make him truly extraordinary. This came from writer-director Victor Salva, who wrote the film after he was shunned by Hollywood after sexually assaulting an adolescent boy on the set of his debut film Clown House. Sorry this one wasn't such a fun piece of trivia, gang.
Pearl and company try to sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Let's sing a round of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Okay, I'll start. Row, row, row your boat. No, wait.
And believe it or not, that's not the first time the song's made an appearance in a well-loved, long-running science fiction franchise. I mean, yes, it also happened in Manos, but in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, that's the one where the Enterprise crew go out into space to find God, end up finding what might be God, and then blow up the Almighty, as you would. Well, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley treat the ears to an unforgettable rendition of this public domain tune.
This episode marks the end of a brief trend where the iconic stinger, a net of context clip from the movie used when the Best Brains credit and copyright notice appear at the end of each episode, was replaced by newly shot footage from the show. This trend began with the first part of the Observer arc, and rather than a shot of the observers, as in previous weeks, this time we see an injured Bobo lying on the ground, having fallen out of Pearl's space van in segment 3.
Did the titular she-creature look familiar to you? If so, you watched too many offerings from American International Pictures. AIP reused the suit briefly during a costume party concert sequence in 1959's Ghost of Dragstrip Hollow.
If you think a film as dreary as The She-Creature would kill director Edward L. Kahn's career, you'd be wrong. The prolific Kahn would direct the enduring hit It, the Terror from Beyond Space, but 2 years later. It is Kahn's most famous movie these days, for it is said to inspire Alien, and if you ever wanted to see what Alien would be like without any of the elements that made Alien stand out, it is the movie for you.
And just in case you thought this movie couldn't get any worse, The She-Creature was remade as Creature of Destruction in 1967 by Larry Buchanan. Who's Larry Buchanan, you ask? Well, some of you might remember him as a director of Attack of the Eye Creatures, Rift in Season 4. Yeah, that guy wanted to put his personal stamp on this material. Needless to say, it's a much worse film even than The She-Creature.
And that's time. Was there anything more irresistible than that Tickle Me Dr. Carlo Lombardi doll?
Yes. Irresistible? Yeah, I don't want that.
You sure? I mean, it sticks to you, so it's always there.
Uh-huh. That's exactly
very convenient. You'll never lose your doll.
I have enough sticky toys in my collection as it is.
Gross.
Oh, man. No. But on our last episode of the podcast, we talked about sort of some 80s and early 90s toys. Now we're going to dive into this sort of mid-90s toy, the biggest mid-90s toy there was.
Yeah, it does not come bigger than Tickle Me Elmo.
Now, although you're a little younger than me, I think you're still too old for Tickle Me Elmo to have been a big deal for you.
Yeah, it was more, for me, it was less a need for Tickle Me Elmo and more a fascination with the world's need for Tickle Me Elmo at the time.
Okay. For me, I admit it was mostly an excuse to make dirty jokes.
Mm-hmm.
But go on.
Well, what was interesting about Tickle Me Elmo is that it's the first time I'd ever seen in my life a craze over a toy resulting in bodily harm and extortionate prices in order to get it. So, like, there was a limited supply, or a far too limited supply than what was needed, of Tickle Me Elmos when they were initially pushed off in, I believe, 96. And so they sold out extremely quickly. And when word got out that they were running out of Elmos, people would line up in the stores. They would camp out there like they were getting tickets to a fancy concert. And of course, people got trampled. There'll be a link in our show notes, but I discovered a archival clip that I'm pretty sure I watched when it aired from The National, in which Peter Mansbridge reports on a Walmart employee who was trampled by consumers trying to get Tickle Me Elmo.
See, now that is terrible and tragic and pointless.
Yeah.
But I have to say, by the time that Tickle Me Elmo came out, I was pretty blasé about that because I had lived through the previous toy to cause rioting and trampling and so forth, the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Oh, I thought that was going to be the He-Man tour again.
It may have been. I don't know what my parents went through to get me those tickets, but it must have been a lot. The Cabbage Patch Kids. There's a Wikipedia entry for the Cabbage Patch Riots.
Oh my God! What?
They are the same thing as the Elmo Riots. Basically, it's people going into stores, violent occurrences happening because there weren't enough of them. People would stand in line for hours and hours and end up empty-handed, shoving and trampling. As well as, it says here on the wiki page, as well as some customers attacking others with handheld weapons, such as baseball bats, in order to obtain a Cabbage Patch doll. That was in 83. The following year, there was finally enough supply for that. But yeah.
Wow. I'm pretty sure I had a Cabbage Patch Kid, or at least there was one in the house. I don't know if it was supposed to be for me or my brother. I just remember there being one around.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea that that such violence my parents must have had to go through in order to get one for us.
I had friends who had them as a kid, but I we never had one, I'll admit, because I guess gender. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They were also like intensely ugly and creepy.
Yeah, they were unpleasant to look at.
But then again, so's Tickle Me Elmo.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's just it. It's like, Tickle Me Elmo, I say boo. I give a big thumbs down. If it was Cuddle Me Grover, I'd be all about it.
Yeah, Grover's great.
Yeah, and of course, it'd be two toys in one because he could technically have a cape attachment and he could become Super Grover.
That's right. And Super Grover's the best.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be fun to throw him across the room, shouting, near, far, near, far.
Yes. There's a monster at the end of this toy.
Although here's something I learned while looking up real quickly, the Tickle Me Elmo thingy-do, is that the people who made Tickle Me Elmo had a toy that they had made beforehand that I did not realize was related to the Tickle Me Elmo.
Oh, do tell.
They were the people who created Alfie.
What's Alfie?
Alfie, I'm going to put a photo in our little Slack. There we go. Alfie was a toy robot that you would stick cards into and then answer questions. And you have to like press the thing on the one side and press the answer on the other side. I don't know. Does that look at all familiar to you? It came through a few different styles, but...
No, I can't say that it does.
Well, now that I think is a toy that I had as a kid. And as a very young nerd trivia lover type, it brought me, I can only assume, hours and hours and hours of joy. Or if I didn't have it like my grandparents did or something, I don't know. I definitely spent some good time with this.
What was its response to being touched?
If it was touched the right way, it would give you praise. And if it was touched the wrong way, it would tell you you were wrong, which I think is a better model of consent.
Yeah, that's real life.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I don't think anybody had to get hurt in order to buy this.
I mean, we can hope. We can hope.
Well, let's see. Let's round out this dreadful episode of hopefully just of MST3K and not of our podcast, but maybe. Let's round it out by talking about some of the other properties that got riffed along the way.
So early on, there is a reference to Manimal.
Neither man nor animal will be the same.
Nor Manimal.
Did you ever see Manimal when it was on?
I saw ads for Manimal, and I would sometimes be flipping through channels and watch the opening credits. But no, that was not a show that was marketed well for my needs.
Oh, man. And that opening credits that had that great narration. Dr. Jonathan Chase, wealthy, young, handsome, a man with the brightest of futures, a man with the darkest of pasts, from Africa's deepest recesses to the rarefied peaks of Tibet, heir to his father's legacy and the world's darkest mysteries, Jonathan Chase, master of the secrets that divide man from animal, animal from man, Manimal.
I mean, I mostly know about it because this is hardly the first time or the last time they would make Manimal jokes on this show.
Of course. That was one of the great things about Manimal is that it lent itself to jokes. One of the things I discovered looking it up for this episode is that David Letterman devoted a whole 9-minute segment called Manimal Show at the Crossroads when the show got put on hiatus.
That's real good. Oh, man.
In which even like a psychic was asked as to what the fate of Manimal will be.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So that's delightful. The Manimal was an intensely silly show. I saw like a little bit of it in reruns because there was like for some reason it would air like late at night reruns on one of the channels when I was doing university. I forget which one. And so I saw a little bit of it there. And Manimal, was mostly a, competently shot, incompetently acted TV series, because like the lead was Simon McCorkindale, who I knew best from the Canadian series Counter-Strike, starring the late Christopher Plummer. And McCorkindale is just the worst in everything. Like he is what they're making fun of in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Ah, okay.
That's the kind of level of acting he provides.
I don't know. That sounds kind of my jam. I really wish that there were more shows that had acting like what you see in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
Oh, sure. Well, the highlight of it is not the kind of boneheaded acting of Simon Corkindale, but in fact, some surprisingly good special effects by Stan Winston, who of course did The Predator and Aliens and Terminator 2 and all sorts of things. Yeah, Stan Winston did the transformation sequences for the pilot that just kept getting reused in every episode.
Well, I mean, you paid for it once. You may as well get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Sure enough, they're great. Like it's basically a werewolf transformation, except he turns into either a panther or a hawk, because those two things he turns into in every episode. But they're genuinely stylish and really well done. Less so is the attempt at a Manimal Revival.
Oh no! Who wanted that?
Oddly enough, the same creator was Glenn A. Larson, or co-creator, I should say. He had a new show on in the late 90s called Nightman, which sounds like a joke from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Seriously.
But Nightman was about a saxophone-playing man who could hear evil thoughts and flew with the help of a magic belt. And did I mention he played saxophone? I believe I did. He teams up with Manimal for an episode. Manimal and his daughter show up because Manimal is hunting down a time-hopping Jack the Ripper.
Wait, what?
Yes.
That's a different movie.
Yeah, I know. That's Time After Time.
I know. I enjoyed it when I was a kid. I don't know if it holds up, but
hard to say. I haven't seen that in a long time either.
Wait, Manimal's in a different TV series making a cameo ripping off Time After Time.
Yes, as a backdoor pilot for a revived Manimal that would focus on his daughter but still have a role for McCorkindale as Manimal Sr.
Where they would hunt after time-traveling mass murderers.
I guess so. It would have more of a sci-fi bent, I assume, which, would make sense because who wants to see Manimal, like, go after gangsters all the time?
I guess I always assumed that Manimal went after, like, people who were trying to do terrible things in the swamp or in nature or something.
I mean, every now and then he went after someone who was mistreating animals, but for the most part, it's like crooks.
Huh. All right. Well, shows how much I know. Manimal. Yeah. It's just a fun word to say.
It's super fun. Like it's one of the worst shows with one of the best titles.
Exactly. All right. What else have you got?
Well, let's talk about another kind of creature who is a little bit unusual. Also referenced in this episode is none other than Howard the Duck. Who?
Howard the Duck was here.
All right, Howard the Duck is a notorious film.
Yes, Howard the Duck is a notorious everything. It was originally a comic book, and it started off as like Steve Gerber, who's the creator of Howard the Duck, threw him into, I believe it was issues of Man-Thing, or at least comics that Man-Thing was appearing in, and Howard the Duck was essentially this wisecracking character who didn't take the story seriously, and it angered Marvel editors so much that they demanded that Howard the Duck be killed. And that did happen, but readers were so angry that they flooded Marvel with hate mail, and someone even sent them a dead duck.
Oh,
yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that, friends.
It was the 70s. It was a weird time.
Fair.
So Howard was brought back to life.
Okay.
And given his own comic book series, where his most popular, I guess, recurring nemesis was a guy with a bell on his head named Dr. Bong.
Dr. Bong?
Dr. Bong.
Huh. And George Lucas just loved this.
Yeah, George Lucas thought this would make for an amazing movie. And it would make sense. I mean, let's face it, there was a write-in campaign to get Howard the Duck for president in 1976.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So I've never seen the movie, although I've seen little bits of it here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one of those movies that everybody hates but is actually good?
No. No, not at all. See, here's the thing. It's not a total waste of time like this movie. It's what it is that it's a movie that doesn't work, that is full of bad decisions, that nonetheless has a lot of charming things in it. It has songs by Thomas Dolby.
That's always good.
Yep. It's got music by John Barry.
Yes, and the John Barry 7.
Yep. And it's got actually a really sweet performance by Leah Thompson as a woman who inexplicably falls in love with Howard the Duck. Apparently, Tori Amos was up for that role and lost.
Oh, that's probably for the best.
Yeah. So in addition to the songs, in addition to the great score, and you know what, the duck costume kind of rules, honestly. But in addition to all those things, and Leah Thompson, there are great stop motion effects. So the evil creature that comes from another dimension that kind of follows Howard around and possesses the guy who ends up playing the villain in the movie, that stop motion creature shows up at the end and really is put to good use. It's really fun. It kind of looks like the Rancor from Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And it's kind of a similar effect, but it's a really fun effect, and that's about it. I mean, unless the pinnacle of comedy for you is Tim Robbins doing a Donald Duck voice in order to communicate with Howard, there's not a lot to recommend, unless the thought of a little person in a duck costume saying, "I know quack foo," amuses the hell out of you.
Well,
there's not a lot to recommend.
No.
So it is as bad as they say, but the stuff that's good in it is genuinely good.
All right. Well, as you mentioned, another thing that is in this movie that we get a few jokes about is, well, actually, it's not in this movie. It's Tim Conway is not in this movie.
Alas.
Hey, Tim Conway as Dorf is going to be in this.
It's Tom Conway. Alas, we don't get Tim Conway doing his Dorf comedy in this film.
Which is weird because it's like, at last I would have some kind of reference for all those Dorf commercials I saw as a kid.
I know, there were so many commercials. It really made it feel... I may have talked about this before, but there were a lot of things when I was a child that I just assumed that when I became older, I would be invested in. And Dorf seemed like one of those things. Dorf, the stock market, a few other things. Very few of them actually turned out to be at all important to me. But Dorf was on that list because of those omnipresent ads. And my aunt, I think, owned one or two Dorf tapes. And so I have seen a bit of a Dorf, let's just say. I remember not thinking it was anything. Like, just imagine the ad, but more of it.
Yeah, I mean, because for listeners, for those who are too young to remember Dorf or too old to be able to fully get their memory back, Dorf is just Tim Conway on his knees, correct?
Oh, yeah, with little shoes covering up his knees to make him look like he's quite short, I guess.
Yeah.
And then he does a lot of, I guess, physical comedy. There's a lot of leaning back and forth and things that you can do while you're on your knees that you can't do otherwise.
Say.
And that's it. I don't know. I don't remember there being anything else to this thing. There's plenty of things on YouTube if you want the full Dorf experience. I guess we'll link to some of that.
Yeah, I bet you any money that all the Dorf stuff is on YouTube and nobody cares.
These are not getting tremendous views, what I'm seeing here.
There are no copyright holders angry about Dorf being uploaded.
But here's the thing. Tim Conway was on the Carol Burnett show.
Yeah.
Which is great. Or at least had some really strong moments. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Was Tim Conway ever funny?
I can think of at least two things. He's funny on an episode of The Larry Sanders Show.
Oh, that's good.
And he's the best part of Speed 2 Cruise Control.
The bus movie sequel?
Yeah, where it's on a boat.
Yeah.
He's teaching Sandra Bullock how to drive a motorboat and not having a great time.
Wait, they got Sandra Bullock to come back for Speed 2?
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is the one who wisely decided not to come back.
I didn't think he was the more sensible of the two.
Oh, I did. Anyone who looked over their credits would know that. There are no Bill and Ted's in Sandra Bullock's filmography.
Isn't she the one who's won the Oscar?
Yeah, but let's face it. I mean, Keanu Reeves has won the Oscar 3 times for all 3 Bill and Ted's.
All right.
Well, I think we've broken our hypnotic spells through the power of willpower alone and, I don't know, brain power, I guess. So we've done enough on the she creature, but I assume that, Chris, you have one last thing, one final fact about this episode or the movie The She Creature to tell us.
No, I'm dry. Do you have anything?
No, I have nothing.
Well, I watched some real good movies recently, but I told you about them. Have you watched anything good?
Have I watched anything good as of late? Well, I am pleased to announce that the official Ghostbusters YouTube started putting up episodes of the real Ghostbusters on Saturday mornings.
What?
For free.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The show totally holds up. It's great. And it's a thrill to see it, and putting it up on Saturday mornings is a smart thing to do. They sort of hold premieres at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Do you watch the premieres? Do you gather together with everybody to watch them?
Well, it's pandemic times. I gather together with no one.
No, but I mean, if it's a premiere, that means that there are people in the chat on YouTube talking to each other.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that's sweet. I mean, I usually when I do these things, even with the Mads events, I'll admit, if I'm watching them live and people are chatting, I just turn that off. It's really distracting and I don't care for it. I don't know. I'm boring that way. I just want to watch the show. I don't want to watch the show and a commentary that's running by too fast to read. That doesn't make me feel more like I'm being part of an exciting moment. I'm just old, and I'm going to rant about live streaming and chatting.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you've seen any good movies lately, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you. For as little as $1 per episode, you can help us research and record this show, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/90.
Well, that was a heck of an episode.
Yes, and what a way to spend our 4-year anniversary.
Yay, we're still doing it though. We survived, we made it through. What are we going to do next?
Well, next we're going to do something. This is exciting for me. This is much like the She Creature, an episode I don't think I've ever seen.
Oh.
We are doing MST3K Season 3, Episode 17, The Saga of the Viking Women and Their Voyage to the Waters of the Great Sea Serpent, served with the short, The Home Economics Story, which I have seen.
Ooh, yes. No, the short is fantastic. I don't remember the movie very much at all. But on my other podcast, which is a literary podcast, we did just put on an episode about a woman-oriented Icelandic saga. So This is material that's very fresh in my mind. There were no giant sea serpents in it.
Suddenly there were no giant sea serpents.
Exactly. But otherwise, until next time.
Look into my eyes and love me.
Now it's garbage. Take it away, Theme Squad. Go watch Wings.